Hey man, how was your night last night? Oh man, happy I got a little wild last night. Really? Yeah, man, I'd hate to check my bank balance right now. Hey Siri, what's my bank account balance?
Your account balance is minus $12.
Want to build your own speech recognition app that gives you the answers that you want to see? Let's do it. What's happening, guys? In this video, we're going to be taking a look at speech command recognition for web apps using React and Tensorflow.JS. Let's take a deeper look as to what we'll be going through. So in this video, we're going to be covering how to install the Tensorflow.JS speech command recognition model. So we'll be able to leverage this to be able to recognize different speech commands using our microphone. Then what we're going to do is we're going to build a React web app that leverages that model, so we'll actually be able to pass through speech commands and see those rendered to the screen. Let's take a look as to how this is all going to fit together. So first up, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be installing the Tensorflow.JS speech command recognition model. Then we're going to be developing a real-time React.JS app that actually works with that model. And then we'll actually show which command is actually rendered to the screen. Ready to do it? Let's get to it. Alrighty, so in order to build our speech command recognition app, we're going to be using a couple of key things. So specifically, we're going to be using create React app. So this is going to allow us to easily create a React app to actually build up our web app. Then what we're going to be doing is we're also going to be using Tensorflow.JS. So Tensorflow.JS has a bunch of amazing pre-trained deep learning models that we can use within web apps, and we're specifically going to be using the speech command recognition app here. So you can see that it allows us to classify 1 second of audio snippets from speech commands, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing. We're going to be able to use a microphone, pass through a number of speech commands, and have those recognized in real time through our web app. Pretty cool, right? Now, as always, all the code for this tutorial is going to be available in the description below. So if you want to get access to that, you can just go to /speech command recognition with Tensorflow.js. But again, link's going to be in the description below. Alrighty, I think it's time to kick things off. So what we're going to first up do is open up a new command prompt if you're on a Windows machine, or a terminal if you're on a Mac. And we're going to be starting out by using the npx create React app command to create a React app shell. So then from there, what we're going to start doing is actually building up our app. So let's go on ahead and trigger that command. So in this case, before I actually run that, so I want to walk you through it. So what we've written is npx create-react-app, and then the name of the folder that we want to create, or the name of the app that we want to create. So in this case, I've called it speech rec. So basically what's going to happen once we run this command is we're going to have a shell React app created. So let's go on ahead and run it. Alrighty, so that's create React app finished running, and you can see here that it's saying happy hacking. And if we want to jump into our app, we can cd into speech rec and then run npm start to start it up. So let's actually do that. So if we go and type in cd and cd into the folder that we created, so in my case it's going to be speech rec, but you might have named it differently. And then what we can do is open this up inside of our favorite code editor. So I'm going to open it up inside of VS Code by typing in code dot. And this has now opened up our folder. Now, inside of here, we've got a bunch of stuff, but we're mainly going to be working inside of this app.js folder. Now, just to take a quick look, so if we start this up by running in npm start, so this is the normal way to start a React app. So you just type in npm start, and this is actually going to start up our server and get it all up and running. So if we type that in, this is going to start everything off. You can see it's opening up into a new web browser, and it should just come up with a template. So you can see here that everything looks like it's working so far. And again, we can edit app.js, and this is going to make updates to our app and allow us to make changes in real time and build it up. Okay, but enough testing that. Now it's time to actually start building our speech recognition app. So in order to do that, we've got a couple of things that we need to do. So let's bring in our to-do list into our README. So in terms of what we've got to do, we've got to import some dependencies, create a recognizer, listen for actions, and then we're going to display that command to the screen. So in terms of our dependencies, the first thing that we need to do is install 2 dependencies, and those are Tensorflow.js, and we also need to install the speech recognition model. So in order to do that, we just need to type in npm install and the name of the packages. So let's go on ahead and do it. All right, so that's now done. Oh, we've written the command. So there's two packages that we're installing, as I said. So we're going to be installing the speech command model, and we're also going to be installing Tensorflow.JS. So in order to do that, we've written npm install at tensorflow-models/speech-command or speech-commands with an S. And then the second library that we've installed is we're going to install is at tensorflow/tf.js. So this is going to install the Tensorflow.js library into our application. So let's go on ahead and run that, and we'll be right back. Alrighty, so that's now installed. So it took about 13.27 seconds, so it didn't take too long. Now the next thing that we need to do is actually start importing our dependencies. So now we're actually going to start getting to the coding. So we're going to start going through all of these README lines. So let's go on ahead and jump into our app.js file and start bringing some stuff in. And we'll actually copy these over and we'll bring them into our app.js file so you can see where we're actually completing these tasks. Okay, so first things first, we need to import our dependencies. Now remember, we've only installed two dependencies, so tf.js and the TensorFlow speech commands model. So we just need to import those in. So let's go on ahead and do it. Okay, so those are our two dependencies imported. So in order to do that, I've written import star as tf from at tensorflow/tf.js. So that's our first dependency imported. So we've brought in TensorFlow.js. And then the second line that we've written is import star as speech from at tensorflow-models/speech-commands. So the first one is going to give us TensorFlow. The second one is going to give us our actual model. So we can now go back to our README and mark that off as done. All right, now the next thing that we need to do is actually create some states to be able to hold our model, our actions, and our labels. So our labels are going to be the actual words that represent our speech commands. Our action is going to be the current action that's being passed through once we speak to it. And our model is going to be our speech command model. So let's go on ahead and bring those in. Alrighty, so that's our model and action states done. So we've written 4 lines of code there. So I brought in some additional React dependencies, and specifically I've brought in, so import React, and then I've also imported some really specific stuff. So use effect and use state from React. So React is going to give us our overall framework. Use effect we'll come to in a second. So use state is what we've actually used down here. So the other 3 lines of code are actually setting up our different states for the different components that we're going to need to handle within our application. So specifically, we've created a state for our model, a state for our action, and a state for our labels. So in order to create a state for our model, what we've done is we've created 2 new variables. So we've created a model and a set model function. And in order to instantiate that, we've used the useState method that we brought in up here, and we've initially set it to null. So what this basically means is that once we've imported our model from the speech commands model, we're going to use the set model method and set that model as the default model inside of this model variable. So this means that by using this state, we're going to be able to reference it throughout our application. We've then gone and done similar things for our current action. So when we actually trigger our action from our microphone, we're going to store that action inside of this action variable, again, using the set action method. And then we've done a similar thing for our labels. So once we instantiate our model, we're going to be able to get the different labels or the different commands that we're going to be able to recognize within our app. Now, a key thing to note is that this code is being written inside of our app function. So we can actually change this and turn it into an ES6 arrow function. So it looks a little bit like that. And so everything that we write from now on is going to be inside of this app function here as well, just a key thing to note. So we can actually bring in these tasks and paste them in here because they're all going to be in there. All right, so that is now, let's just clean this up a little bit. So that is now our step 1 done. So if we go back to our README, we can now mark this off as done as well. All right, now the next thing that we want to do is actually create our recognizer. Before we do that, let's just start up our app, make sure there's no issues. Doesn't look like we're getting any issues so far. Let's just wait for a second. All right, perfect. So that's still running, no issues so far. So let's just quit that. All right, now the next thing that we need to do is actually go on ahead and create our recognizer. So this is going to start working with this speech commands model here. So let's go on ahead and do that. So in order to create our recognizer, what we're actually going to be doing is creating a function called load model. And we're going to basically run this model once our application starts up using our use effect command. So we're going to use our use effect, load up our model, and this is then going to be saved inside of our model state. So we'll be able to reference it wherever we are in our application. So let's go on ahead and flesh out this function. All right, so before we finish our function, let's actually trigger it and see that it's all working. So what we're actually doing here is we've fleshed out a little bit within our load model function. So first up, we're creating our recognizer. And in order to do that, we've written speech.create, and then we're passing through a command to say that we want to load our browser model, and we're storing that inside of a variable called recognizer. But note that we haven't actually put it inside of our model variable or our model state yet. So assuming all's well and our model loads, we're going to console log out model loaded. Then what we're going to do is ensure that our model is actually loaded. So we want to make sure that our model is loaded, and the speech commands model actually has a function called ensure model loaded to make sure that it has actually been loaded. And once it has loaded, we're going to console log out the labels that are available for that particular model. And these are really the different commands that we're able to use within our speech commands model. Then in order to trigger that function, we're actually using the use effect hook, which is what we imported up here. So this is actually going to run. So the way the use effect hook actually works is it triggers every single time it detects a change in a certain component. Now, because we haven't actually passed through a component, it's actually going to run once when our model starts up. And specifically, it's going to go on ahead and run the load model function inside of this anonymous function here. So if we start this up, ideally what we should see is we should see model loaded console logged out, and we should see our word labels console logged out. So let's start this up and take a look. So again, this might take a little bit longer to compile now because when we actually run, it's going to be trying to load in our model. Okay, so there's nothing displayed to our console yet. Oh, and we probably need to save this as well. That's probably why we're not seeing anything. Okay, cool. So it looks now as though our model is loaded, and as soon as we've saved it, you can see that we're now getting all of our different commands appear. So these are all the different commands that our speech recognition model is going to be able to detect. So background noise obviously is not a command, but we've got a detection for that. Unknown, down 854, go left 9, no, 1, right 7, 6, stop 3, 2, up yes, and 0. So we've got around about 20 different commands that our model is going to be able to recognize. So we're going to be able to pass these out and allow our model to actually use them in real time. Okay, so enough on that. We can now stop our model. Now, the last thing that we need to do in order to finish our load model function is set our model to our model state. So this is going to allow us to use our model across our application. And we're also going to set our labels now that we've got those available. So we'll be able to reference model and labels anywhere through our app to be able to use them. So let's go on ahead and finish this up. Okay, so that is our recognizer now done. So we've gone and added 2 additional lines to that function. So set model, and then to that we've passed through recognizer, which is our actual model that we've gone and loaded up right about here. And then we've also gone and set our labels, and to that we've passed through recognizer.word label. So this means that whenever we use the labels variable, we're going to be able to actually access those labels. And so I believe the labels are just an array. So we can actually just index them by using the number that we recognize. And likewise, we can use our model just by accessing our model now. So this is step 2 now done. So we can go back and actually mark that off as done. Now, the next thing that we want to do is actually listen for some actions. So we're going to run through step 3 and step 4. So what we're actually going to do is define a function to actually listen to our actions, and then we're going to set up a button which actually kicks it off. So let's go on ahead and flesh this out. Okay, before we go and finish this up, so we've gone and started building up our recognize commands function. So what we've done is created a new function called recognize commands. We've made it asynchronous because we want to wait for our model to actually get a result. And then as soon as our model is triggered, what we're going to do is console log out that we're listening for commands. This is then going to use a method as part of our model. Remember, we loaded that inside of a variable called model, and we're actually going to run the listen function. So this is actually going to listen to our microphone to see if we're actually passing through a command. Then what we're doing with that is we're using a callback. So specifically, we're passing through our result, and we're going to console log out our result scores. Then we're also passing through a couple of additional parameters, specifically include spectrogram. So this actually generates a spectrogram for every command that's passed through. And we're also passing through our probability threshold. So this is inside of curly braces over down here. So if you wanted, you could make the probability threshold higher or lower, depending on how accurate you want your commands to be. Then what we actually need to do is set up a way to actually trigger this recognize commands function. So what we're going to do is really easily, we're just going to go and set up a button which actually kicks this off. So let's go on ahead and do that. Then we'll test it out and then we'll finish it up. Okay, so that's our button set up. So what we've done is inside of our return statement down here, I've gone and deleted some of the template code which was there previously. So I believe it's just had some of the template writing in there. So we've got rid of that. And then what we've done is we've created a new tag. So specifically, we've created a button and we've used the onClick method to be able to recognize our command. So once we click our button, what's going to happen is this recognize commands function is going to be triggered and it's going to use our microphone and start listening to whether or not we're passing through any commands. So what we then need to do after that is actually display some stuff to the screen. So we'll do that in a second or after this. And then what we also want to do is actually make sure that we handle all of the detections that we get. So when we actually go and listen to our model and get a result, you're going to be able to get a bunch of different things. So let's actually console log out the whole result. And then, so specifically, you're going to be able to get the result scores, you're going to be able to get the result spectrogram, and I think a couple of other things. But let's actually take a look at what this looks like. So again, we're going to start up our app by running npm start. And this should take us to our browser, so we can close our old one. And if we open up our console, we should be able to see some stuff happening. All right, so our model's loaded. We've now got all of our different labels. So if we go and trigger our command, so remember we've got our command button down here now. So I'm just bringing the mic a little bit closer. So if we actually go and run our command, we should ideally see, what was it again? Listening for commands, which is this console logged bit down here, and we should see all of the results displayed out. So let's go on ahead. Where's my browser gone? Let's go on ahead and open this up. Okay, cool, got our browser. All right, so if we go and trigger our command, yes, no, up, down, left, right. So you can see that we're getting a number of different things displayed over here. So if we actually open this up, so you can see we're getting an embedding, we're getting scores, and we're getting a spectrogram. So over here, you can see that we've got a number of different scores. Now, each one of these represents the probability that that particular command has been detected. So in this case, this super low detection here for 0 is actually mapping through to background noise. If we go and try to find the highest one, or what's the one for, let's try it again. Yes. Oh wait, yes isn't actually one of our commands, is it? Let's try down. 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 If we go and we've got them displayed there. Okay, so down was, I think it was 2. So if we go back up to our labels, so 0, 1, 2. So, and you can see that right there. So down is getting a really high probability threshold. So it's actually gone and detected our command appropriately. But right now we're only displaying the scores. We're not actually returning the labels. So we want to do a little bit of pre-processing. First up, to grab the maximum number. So we're going to define a function called Argmax, which is similar to the numpy.argmax function in Python. And we're going to go ahead and grab this label. So ideally we want to grab number 2, and we're going to map that back through to our labels, which you can see up here. So let's go on ahead and do that. So we're going to jump back into our code. and we're going to start finishing this up. So first up, what we're going to do is define our Argmax function, and that's going to allow us to grab the highest probability value. And we can stop our app to begin with. So let's go on ahead and define our Argmax function, and then we'll do a little bit of additional pre-processing. Alrighty, so that's our Argmax function defined. So basically what we're doing is passing through an array, and this line of code here is basically doing a mapping through each one of those values and reducing it down and returning the highest value. So basically it's checking whether or not the current value is greater than the previous value. If so, it's going to return that value, else it's going to return the value prior or the other highest value. And specifically what we're going to be doing is we're getting back the key that represents the highest value. So this is going to allow us to transform that array of probabilities. So remember, we just saw the 0.99. We're going to convert that to the highest index, which we can then use to map through to our word labels. So now that we've got that, we can start to do a little bit of additional work inside of our recognize commands function. So let's finish this up. Okay, so that is our recognize commands function now completely done. So what we're actually doing here, what we've added to it is two lines. So this set action line and this set timeout line. So our set action line is actually taking our raw probability results, remember the 0.99 array, and it's actually converting it to an appropriate label or the actual command that's been detected. So what we're doing is we're getting our result scores. We're then out of that getting our object values, because remember in that particular result scores array, we're actually getting a object rather than an array. So we want to convert it to a standard array. We're then passing that array to our Argmax function, which is going to return our highest valued index. And then once we've got that number, so ideally 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on, we're then passing that through to our labels. Remember, we set our labels up here and used it using our useState hook. And this basically means that our index is now going to map through to our labels. So once we set our action, we should effectively have our action being output. We can actually console log our action as well, so we can see that. And then the other line that we've added is a set timeout. So this basically means that our model is just going to run for 10 seconds so that we're not continuously listening. But again, we could take this out and just let it run until we close down our app as well. And to do that, we've created an anonymous function, and then we've passed through model.stopListening, and we've set it to run for 10 seconds. Now, what we can also do is display our command to the screen as well. So we can make a couple of updates to be able to actually display it. So let's finish this up, and that should be our code done. Okay, so the last line that we wrote is just a simple ternary. And what we're doing is we're checking whether or not we have an action. So remember, we're setting our action state using set actions, and we're actually doing that within recognize command in this line here. And if we do have an action, then we're going to display that out to the screen using this div. So we're creating a div, and then inside of curly braces, we're passing through our action. And if we don't have an action, then we're just going to display no action detected. So this should really be our code done now. So let's test it out, and if it's all working, then we can update our to-do list. So let's run npm start again. We can close our old one, and again, we're going to open up our console because we're displaying all of our good stuff through there. All right, so our model's loaded, we've got our labels as per usual, and at the moment you can see we're seeing no action detected. So nothing's actually been detected as of yet. But we want to see, and we actually want to pass through some detections or some different commands. So we're going to try for, let's try down, up, left, right, and see how that works. Down, up, left, right. You can see that we're passing through a number of different commands, and we're actually getting those displayed to the screen. So let's try some of the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 9. Okay, so you can see that we're now able to pass through our commands using our microphone, and we're actually able to display those to the screen. So again, so that we're just displaying them to the screen at the moment, but we could potentially do a lot more with this, and we will in a future video. So let's quickly jump back to our to-do list now and make our updates. But that pretty much wraps it up. So we're actually now able to use our microphone, so to pass through commands, so down, up, left, right, 4, 4. Oh, it looks like it stopped listening. 4, up. So if you get this error as well, so this is because you've clicked it twice as well, so it's going to kick off the stream. So if we actually do that again, 4, 4, 5, 6. All right, maybe it's having fun with my Australian accent, but you can start to see that it's actually able to detect those different commands. Now, you can also use this API to refine these commands as well. So if you'd like to see a video on that, by all means, leave a mention in the comments below and we can delve into that a little bit more. Now, if we actually jump back to our README now, so we're now able to listen for actions and we're also able to display our commands to the screen. So that about wraps it all up. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and tick that bell so you get notified of when I release future videos. And let me know how you went about recognizing different commands in your web apps. Thanks again for tuning in. Peace.